The views presented in this program are not meant to express the specific views of the Lafayette Bible Fellowship. You are listening to the Vigilance Radio Network.
Good morning and happy Saturday. Welcome back to the show. Welcome back to the podcast, Culture Insanity. We are on episode 9 now, so welcome back. We look forward to what we're going to be talking about. I think we look forward to it. It's going to be another another engaging discussion, we hope, and another romper. Potentially polarizing discussion. But that's what we're going for now. So there's only one thing on the docket to talk about today, but it's sort of a big old mess that we're going to try to sort of tackle and unravel and try to bring you guys along for how this has been developing in the last couple weeks since we last aired. So that topic is regarding free speech. So, get your seatbelts fastened, and here we go, I guess. You are now entering. So this debate of free speech came up in the last couple weeks, and it, as Pastor Montu had pointed out, it's not a new discussion, but it's a recent discussion. It's resurfaced and reared its ugly head again, particularly in how
all over pop culture.
Yeah, it's all over pop culture, and really the basis for our discussion today is how does free speech sort of interact and coexist with just the digital world that we are in, with social media and all these different platforms for people to have their voice heard. Like how does free speech navigate in that world? So here we go. So the starting point for how it's popped up recently was a sort of back and forth, a feud between a man named Carlos Mesa, I think that's how you pronounce his last name, and then Steven Crowder. So two people on opposite ends of the political spectrum. Carlos Mesa is a contributor to a publication called Vox or Vox Media. That's correct, right? Vox Media.
Vox.
Basically, if you don't know Vox Media, their whole thing is they provide opinion. I think their slogan is they provide an ounce of opinion with every ounce of fact and data. So it's a publication that has the ability for people to run wild, people that contribute on it, I guess. So that's his sort of basic background. And then Steven Crowder is a very popular conservative, what do you call him? Conservative what?
Commentator.
Yeah, he's a commentator. I would think that he would lean towards even ultra conservative.
Yeah. He has a show called Louder with Crowder, and he's very opinionated, right. Ultra conservative, as Pastor Monty says. So, right. It started between these two guys, and basically Crowder is every time this man Carlos Mesa is publishing something or tweeting about something or whatnot, Crowder is then going on his show and attacking it or tackling it, commentating on it, and he's doing it in a very specific way. Every time he does, he's using what has been, he's using words and names for this man, because this Carlos Mesa guy, he's gay, and Crowder, every time he commentates on it, is slandering this guy, so on and so forth. So there's this whole debate that's sort of erupted out of this back and forth between these two individuals, and for the record, this Crowder guy, that's how he sort of got his following. This is not new
Well, his show is called Loud with Crowder.
Yeah,
Louder
he's-
with Crowder.
Yeah, he's very all about,
Outspoken.
being outspoken. So, so from where he's coming from, this is just going to work type thing, So there's that. But as I said, there's this whole thing that's erupted as far as where are the lines between Crowder's freedom of speech and hate speech, with how he's addressing this Carlos Mesa guy and what's appropriate. He's using, the platform he's on, YouTube, to do this. And so then there's this huge crusade and call to action from Carlos Mesa and his camp on, YouTube acting. And, and so they did. So what have I missed so far? What are the basic details I've missed?
So then they were wanting YouTube to take action. So then YouTube put Crowder's videos under review, and that caused a whole thing because Mesa or whatever, he has a following, but not nearly as large as Crowder's.
Yeah, it's like 100,000 to 3-point-something million or something.
Yeah, Crowder has like a really big following.
Yeah.
And so YouTube put Crowder's account under review, which, by the way, isn't the first time that's happened. And then Google, because Google owns YouTube, and they came back and they said, well, he didn't really violate any policies. We find what he says distasteful as a company, but he didn't violate any policies, so he's not going to be punished for that, and his channel can continue to stay. Which then caused a huge uproar with Mesa or Maza's following, Carlos M's following.
Yeah,
and
figure that out.
Yeah, we'll play back.
It's going to be a long episode if we keep saying his name wrong.
Yeah, right. And so it caused a whole backlash with that, and then they're saying that Google isn't homosexual friendly. They're not friends of the LGBTQ plus. And
well, it started with YouTube being attacked, but obviously since Google owns YouTube, and then Google's being roped into it.
So then they went back, and then then Google was like, well, okay, we'll review even more. And so then they decided to demonetize Crowder's videos, which, by the way, most of his videos were already demonetized. Now he does this like mug thing where he sells mugs because his videos has been demonetized for a long time. And so then the community, the LGBTQ plus community, was saying that that's not enough, and that actually martyrs him, and he's had more subscribers since then. And now there's a whole thing with what is it? Where then Google came out with a new policy for YouTube, and so now they've been like deleting videos, and like history professors have found like videos that they used, like what was the one, the Hitler propaganda movie, for instance.
It's called
Triumph of the Will.
Triumph of the Will. Yeah.
Yeah, where like Triumph of the Will, for instance, like history teachers' pages that they use for their students have now been like taken down or demonetized because they have inflammatory historical archive on them, and it's clearly what they're being used for. It's clearly not to propagandize, but people's things are being taken down. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at.
I want to backtrack a little bit just to shed, to give it justice or whatever as far as Mesa's point of view.
I'm gonna research that.
Yeah, please do. So Mesa, he basically went on Twitter and produced a series of tweets, attacking the actions of Crowder, saying that his content was deliberately posted in order to humiliate someone because of the language. Again, the language he's using is really inappropriate, I guess. He's using.
I'm thinking the word obnoxious.
Sure, both. it's obnoxious.
Crowder, you're talking about Crowder?
Crowder.
Yeah.
But that's his gig. That's like
that doesn't make it right.
That's like
anyways,
what's
we'll
his face. Well, that's like what's his face back in New York. You know what I'm talking about?
You're talking about Shock Jock?
Yeah.
Sideshow Bob?
Yeah. So Same.
You know, Sideshow Bob
From The Simpsons, I know Sideshow Bob.
Yeah, this is the shock jock.
Yeah, but anyway, he does.
He always has girls come on and get.
Howard Stern.
Yeah, Howard Stern.
Oh, okay.
His whole shtick is to be obnoxious and to.
I don't know. I don't think that's true of Crowder.
Crowder is using specific words and names. No, Howard Stern.
Well, because
Howard Stern hosts an R-rated show for sure, but he's not on his thing calling people names and cyberbullying them necessarily.
Crowder knows he's pushing buttons.
We'll get there. Anyways, we're trying to go from Mesa's point of view. He said that the content makes hurtful and negative personal comments about his ethnicity and sexuality because again he's a homosexual. I think he's Mexican. Maybe Josh will research that.
Yeah, I'm researching it. But yes, he is.
And that his content incites others to do the same thing, harass and bully him, and it's led to doxing. He said so. Doxing is another piece of jargon.
You know what doxing is, Pastor Monty?
I've heard the term.
Doxing basically is publishing personal information about someone for the purpose of
getting others to harass them.
Yeah, to hurt them.
It's bad form.
Yeah, it's not good. But basically, so that's the backstory. So he produced a series of tweets, outlining how it's making him feel and what it's doing and stuff. And then in response, as Pastor Monty was alluding to, Crowder basically he did acknowledge the use of the language he's using, but he said that it was in a comedic fashion only when arguing against the viewpoints of Mesa, and he is not advocating for like harassing someone. In fact, he says he condemns it completely. But
did somebody tell him to stick to his day job?
Who?
Crowder.
This is Crowder's day job.
No. You're a commentator, not a comedian. Stick to your day job.
Actually, Steven Crowder is a stand-up comic.
Is he really?
Is he really stand-up? Does he do stand-up?
He did stand-up.
Oh, back in the day.
Anyways, so Crowder says, I'm going to read a little snippet. Crowder went on to claim that Mesa's efforts to flag his videos were part of a larger campaign from big media companies to silence conservative creators, noting a $200 million investment from NBC in Vox Media back in 2015, calling the situation comparable to David versus Goliath, and he said that this is a war we will fight till the absolute bitter end. So yeah. Crowder is acknowledging that Vox Media has a liberal bent, and because Crowder is on the opposing side, that this is just part of a bigger whatever to silence the other side. So
the framework here
is this big old mess.
Well, to help with understanding the framework, as far as Crowder is concerned, all is fair in love and war. And as far as he's concerned, this is a cultural war. And so everything's open.
So
I have a definitive research. Inside Edition.
Oh yeah.
Inside Edition.
Good source.
Where of course Pastor Monty's good friend Bill Riley came from.
Yeah.
Bill O'Reilly.
Bill
O'Reilly came from. They pronounce it Maza.
Okay.
Maza.
Going forward, Maza. Forgive us, Carlos Maza.
We're not meaning to
slander and offend
incite you in any way.
Dox you.
It's just we didn't understand how to pronounce your name.
Yeah, so Crowder is, claiming this is part of a larger plan to basically deplatform him and his people and all these different things. And then, as Josh alluded to, YouTube acted by, doing things like demonetizing his videos, can't make money on his videos, and so he's now having to, make money off just merch, mugs and such, shirts that are, again, obnoxious and inappropriate, or both.
Yeah.
But so I'm going to read a little snippet from what YouTube said after this whole thing boiled over and they were basically forced to take a stance. YouTube said, our team spent the last few days conducting an in-depth review of the videos flagged to us, and while we found language that was clearly hurtful, the videos as posted don't violate our policies. We've included more info below, so on and so forth. As an open platform, it's crucial for us to allow everyone from creators to journalists to late-night TV hosts to express their opinions with and in the scope of our policies. Opinions can be deeply offensive, but if they don't violate our policies, they'll remain on our site. Even if a video remains on our site, it doesn't mean we endorse or support that viewpoint. So that was their initial response. Then you can imagine that Mazza was not happy with that because YouTube is allowing this thing to stand.
Well, not just Mazza.
Right, but he's the face of it right now.
The LGBT community, basically.
Right, but
he's not just them, but yes.
He's the face of it. So after a few days and after a bunch more tweets and all this other stuff, they basically entered the water there because they said they're going to continue to research it, and that's when they did the thing like demonetize, which still didn't please either party, and so then there was all this uproar.
The demonetizing is a symbolic error since they really had demonetized him earlier.
Yeah.
It's just symbolism.
So we basically have our setup, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it took about 20 minutes to get our setup, and it's kind of a complex.
It's been happening over 2 weeks, and
there's kind of a complex. But before
parties involved.
So before we get to really discussing, we wanted the discussion to be as fruitful and open as possible, which means what we would like for you guys to do is take a moment to share this conversation so that we can get it, so we can get the possibility for people to comment back. It's an open discussion. Thanks, by the way, Jesse, for saying Howard Stern.
Sideshow Bob.
Sideshow Bob. You see what I'm saying? Sideshow Bob and Howard Stern. I'm gonna find a picture to post. Anyway.
Yes.
So if you can take a moment to share this conversation so that we can have as much discussion as possible. And remember, this is a discussion, so feel free to comment back to us, and we'll try to get to you. We'll try to get to it as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
And also, remember, this is free to you, but it's not free to us. So if you want to support us in any way, we would really appreciate it. Even $1 a month would be helpful, and you can just do that at the donate tab at abfpdx.org.
To follow up on that, this is a discussion that doesn't have to be just for here and now either. Like, it's going to be posted to our page, and if it has you thinking throughout the week or weeks or whatever, feel free to come back to it. We're paying attention to that, so feel free for it to be an active discussion, not just for the next hour or 45 minutes.
And I see some of you have already liked it, so I appreciate that.
Yeah. So I have a whole series of questions here trying to sort of systematically break this down. So if you gentlemen would be so kind as to help me with that. So first of all, how can we just properly assess the different parties involved? I know that's sort of a general question, but like what do we make of Crowder's actions? For example, the words obnoxious were used earlier, or bad form, but what do we make of where he's coming from? What do we make of where Moss is coming from? What do we make of how YouTube responded? I guess we'll start there.
Well, I mean,
let's not spend too much time there.
Yeah, okay. I would liken this unto a bad marriage.
Between who?
Between Crowder and Mazza. See, here's the deal.
I'm sure they would appreciate you.
I'm sure they would. Yeah, they would agree with that.
Yeah. Here, what you have going on is that in the art of communication, if you really want your communication to go downhill, then stay away from the subject and personalize. And a lot of times the reasons why marriage relationships go into the toilet and need to be flushed is because in their communication with each other, they stay away from the central issues involved and they begin personalizing.
I'm honestly surprised that you're taking a stance against Crowder's position.
I'm just saying that, I mean,
it was only last episode that you made a comment about women should keep their legs shut. Their damn legs shut.
I think that
or or joking that women have the right to vote.
You sometimes
which was a joke.
It was a joke.
In case
for the
you've
record.
been carrying that,
but
you sometimes underestimate, Josh, my comprehensive sophistication.
All right, well, let's get back to this conversation and not your comprehensive sophistication.
So the real issue is that
bad marriage, communication skills.
Well, Crowder, as I said,
Joseph Jesse is surprised as well, for the record.
He sees this as a cultural war, and the old adage "all is fair in love and war" really, I believe, applies to where he's coming from, and so he's going to do everything he can to needle his opponent and to pick at him, including personalization, which does nothing except exasperate the situation.
And that's fine. That's what he thinks, right? Clearly, he thinks it's okay.
Sure,
I don't think you can justify that he actually thinks that. For the record, I've seen a lot of Crowder.
Yeah.
Like before this came up, he was already on my radar, and I've watched him, and he's actually really respectful generally.
my only exposure to him is I've seen one of his episodes, and then he was on Joe Rogan's podcast. Which
I've
is
seen
long podcast,
a couple of things that he've done. I mean, I wasn't offended, but I'm I'm on the right of things philosophically.
My wife
probably hates him.
Yeah, not to throw Michaela under the bus, but she can't stand Crowder.
Yeah, she probably thinks he's very obnoxious.
Yes.
Yeah.
He kind of is, but
he offends my sensibilities.
Okay.
Anyways, but
now here we go back to the personalizing. Okay.
But so how do we filter where he's coming from? Like, where do we stand on it? Not so much what does he think is okay or maybe doesn't think is okay, but like, where are we coming from? Obviously, I said that I think it's it's in bad form and not productive.
Well, biblically speaking, I would say from a communication standpoint, it's not productive.
I don't personally have a problem with 98% of what he says. It's the sauciness that I think is not productive. I do think it's the pot calling the kettle black.
Of course it is.
I think that's something that is ridiculous. And I think that
in general or in this instance?
In general, because I think that's what we're dealing with.
When I don't think
you said like Crowder,
Massa was doing the same thing to him.
No, not on a personal level, but not on a personal level, but on a general level. Yeah, I mean, so maybe we're not talking about Crowder specifically, but we are talking about the right wing culture, and right wing culture is absolutely demonized.
Oh,
so,
yeah, terribly so, and you can look at instances. This is not something that has just happened overnight. This is something which, for the last 10 years or more, has been growing in how it is that the far left will present its agenda and seek to stop any discussion of any dissent of their particular point of view that they're promoting.
Well, I think
that's been going on for a long time.
I think that what you're dealing with is sort of like, left-wing McCarthyism.
Yeah, sure. But you might have to explain that for some people who don't even know who McCarthy was.
Well, it's just sort of. I mean, look it up. Look it up if you don't know what McCarthyism is. Maybe I'll post a link. But I think what you're dealing with is sort of a witch hunt, a cultural witch hunt against views that are destructive to a particular narrative, not necessarily to the fabric of society, but to a particular understanding of that. And I think that that's where the conversation becomes like really important for us to be having.
Yeah, I agree.
Is what are we really fighting for? Like, or maybe not fighting for. What are we really fighting about? I think that's why Steven Crowder is so verbose, because what we're really fighting about, he sees as a much larger issue. And it is really interesting. You talk about college campuses. One of Steven Crowder's shticks is going to college campuses and posting big signs that say, change my mind, and then he'll make a statement. So change my mind, abortion is murder. And then he'll just sit there with a table and a microphone and let people come up and talk to him on those college campuses. And their thing is to try to change his mind. And he's always generally respectful, like pretty respectful at those events. And so that's like one of his things. And they'll talk to him about, being an American this or an American that. But he's not even American. He's Canadian. And he comes from, you have to understand, Steven Crowder comes from a culture where free speech, as we understand it in America, is not protected.
Right.
Yeah, and then, I don't know if you guys saw that thing I posted last night, but Jordan Peterson is trying to get this social media platform going. So, and he's also Canadian.
Right.
And speaking of college campuses, that's how he really
Yeah, let me look that up.
That's how he really sprung to prominence. Is
what's with all these Canadians interfering in our democracy?
He was a college professor at the University of Toronto or something, and he basically was being told he was being threatened that if he refused to use pronouns of transgender, that he would lose his job or be whatever. And so then from there he really
yeah
exploded.
He said, really? You haven't heard anything yet.
Yeah, and his whole thing was that's a complete infringement on free speech. And so speaking of Canada, and so he's got this whole social media platform he's kickstarting called ThinkSpot. Yeah, and it's in like beta right now, but basically the long and short of it is it's a social media platform where the only way something will be censored is if the government says delete that or something. So the whole point being it's an open platform to discuss any and all things, even offensive things. So, anyways, back to another question then. So, where are the lines between these kinds of speech? So one party's saying hate speech, one party is advocating it's free speech, and that's the larger problem. The Google CEO said this when he was interviewed with somebody. He says, we rank content based on quality and really prevent borderline content which doesn't exactly violate policies, which need to be removed but which still cause harm. It's a hard societal problem because we need better frameworks around what is hate speech, what's not, and how do we as a company make these decisions at scale and get it right without making mistakes. So where are those lines?
Yeah, what do you, you guys as the audience, what do you think about it while we talk about it?
Yeah.
Should those lines be there?
Mm-hmm.
Pastor Monty, I'm sure you have an idea.
I have no problem. I agree with what was said by the CEO. I think the real issue is
whose name I won't even try to pronounce. By the way,
is defining
an Indian man.
Is providing an accurate definition that everybody can agree to. See, my observation in observing all the stuff that's going on culturally and politically is that oftentimes those people who cry the loudest are more guilty than those that they're crying out about.
So he who smelt it dealt it.
Essentially,
to put it in terms we can all understand.
Yeah.
Or if you would prefer the Shakespeare, methinks she doth protest too much.
The reality of it is that if it is applied across the board to everybody, then that's appropriate. But what happens is that one hides the fact that something is hate speech, but they're just as guilty, if not more, in how they present things themselves.
Do you think that there should be a freedom? I mean, when we talk about like Google, okay, and we talk about YouTube, that's a private company, right?
Right.
So they can make policies as they want to, but it's a much larger issue of what should be allowed in society. Do you think that people should be allowed to say anything that they want to?
Not that they should, but that not that they'll be right or wrong, but that they should have the ability to.
Well,
and maybe to frame it, to take what they're saying and put it next to elevate it to the same standard as, for instance, a university or even the Bible.
I would go back to the principle that freedom is not the right to do what you want to do, but the power to do what you ought. And so, with freedom comes responsibility in how it is applied, and
Uncle Ben,
and
Abraham Lincoln.
And there are times when yes, you may have the right to do something, and you may be able to throw something out there, but you have to ask yourself if you're intellectually capable at all, and you're just not vomiting. You have to ask yourself, at what point is what I'm going to say productive or non-productive to the integrity of the fabric of society? And I think that's what we're coming down to. Is we're coming down to the fact that this free speech thing where you just vomit whatever you want to without any thought of consequence, in my personal opinion, is destructive to society and is part of the step that we're taking towards seeing societies break down around the world, and the advent of our Lord Jesus Christ.
Are you advocating for there to be censorship when it's not productive?
Personal censorship?
No, because I tend to be more libertarian in how I view things politically. So I don't think that, first of all, you can't legislate morality.
I mean, we do it every day.
Well, they try. They try. You know, the government has yet to understand that you can't legislate morality. For example, prohibition. But the reality of it is that you have to ask yourself, if you want to have a relationship either on a intimate basis or on a more global basis, then there has to be some decorum in how it is that you deal with people. And you can agree to disagree, and that's okay. But you're not going to have any relationship if every time you see somebody, you snipe at them and make comments, and it's unproductive.
I think that's an interesting point of, you know, this whole new social media platform that's Peterson is trying to get started. This ThinkSpot is. One of his things is he wants it to be, you know how Twitter has a maximum characters.
Yes.
His thing is it has to be a minimum, I think it said minimum 50 word before you can post, which the thought being that people have to think about what they're going to say and articulate what they want to say, and to try and prevent like trolls and stuff from just doing like you're saying snipes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But then that's also sort of a level of censorship is the backlash.
Joseph Jesse has
but it's interesting.
Yeah.
Joseph Jesse had something to say. He says, I think big tech companies have been taking a hands-off approach for years, and we're starting to see that the position that position wasn't tenable. Where they go from here is going to be very interesting to watch, and there will be mistakes made and overreaches.
And they are upfront about that too. Like the CEO of YouTube and Google, in those interviews, they're basically upfront about it. Just like Joe's saying, like we are not where we should be. Like we should be a lot more prepared for these things than we are, and we're gonna try to like do this and that. But yeah. They're being forced to take positions.
These are sociological issues which are outside of the framework that they even begin to understand as they envision what their company would look like. So
I don't know about that. I mean, I think that when somebody creates something, they have a certain ideology. I think.
I agree with that.
If what you're saying is essentially it's like Einstein and his involvement in the nuke, you know, where he like looks back on it and he's like, I want nothing to do with that sort of thing because of what happened from his involvement with it and the destructive power of it. I think that it's ideology that brings that into existence, and then I think when they go to the practical, I don't know if it's with Einstein, like it's a morality thing. I don't know if it's a morality thing here. I think it's a dollar thing.
No,
it's the ideology that brings the technology into reality, and then it starts hurting their bottom line when people start using it exactly as they intended because they were thinking what was best. They thought that people would do right by it, and that right would outweigh the wrong that they probably knew people were going to do with it.
Yeah, for sure.
Like they didn't know that people were going to.
Yeah.
You know, say bad things.
I kind of agree with you, but what I'm saying, Josh, is and it's supposition on my part. I'd have to sit down with them and talk with them, but that's going to happen. But the reality of it is
we're willing for an interview, guys.
Yeah.
With who exactly? CEO of YouTube?
CEO.
Google.
Let us know if we can get on an interview.
Need to work for the right
Pastor Monty has a show. It's on Tuesdays, and we are more than willing to have you come on. It's called Truth Time with Pastor Monty. Get a hold of us, and we'll get you in there.
Yeah, absolutely. If I were to sit down and talk with these guys, and we were to talk honestly, I would say that probably their vision of what it was they were seeking to create when they started their company had lots of unknowns as it grew that were put into play as unintended consequences. And my feeling is, as a social scientist observing what has taken place, is that this is one of those unintended consequences that has gotten out of hand. And to your point earlier, Josh, I think that part of that is because they have a different view of mankind than Scripture.
Yeah.
And the belief that somehow people are going to be good and rein themselves in.
But okay, but the unintended consequence part, that's what I'm pushing back on. Even in what you said earlier, you had said that you think that people should essentially use their freedom wisely, right?
Yeah, I agree.
To me, it's like I don't understand how those two ideas don't necessarily connect with each other, because it's like, obviously, just as you laughed about, people aren't going to use those things wisely. And in my mind, it's not like the people who created YouTube didn't know that people were going to use it inappropriately or weren't using it inappropriately. They knew.
Let me be clear.
They knew. They just thought the good outweighed the bad.
No, let me be clear that most people who spout, I have the freedom to do this, haven't the faintest concept of what freedom really is.
I don't know about that.
I do. Most people who spout that have no idea, or that there's a consequence of responsibility attached to freedom. And the freedom that we experience in this nation has come at the cost of people's blood. And the people that I've talked to over my, 50 plus years of dealing with these types of issues is that they don't have an understanding of, they're shallow in their understanding of what freedom really is. That's my opinion as somebody who deals regularly with people that are in chaotic issues within their lives and have not been responsible in the exercise of their freedom.
Yeah, I just don't think that it's an unforeseen consequence. I think the unforeseen consequence was actually foreseen and put aside at the expense of their ideals. I think they said to themselves, the good that this will do is more important than the backlash that will happen, and we'll deal with the backlash when it comes, but they got too big for their britches, and now they can't help but address the backlash.
I guess the only way that we could dispel this conflict, Josh, is if we were to get that interview. If you're listening, please give us a call and ask them right up front, as the company was in the process of inception and implementation, did they hire psychologists and sociologists in order to deal with the consequence?
Well, just think about Google in particular. Like, Google's slogan was "Do no evil."
Really?
Yeah, wasn't it?
Yeah, when they something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. That was their thing, and that's no longer part of their charter.
No, now it's we want to make money at any cost.
Okay.
No, it's just Google.
Is their motto, "Don't be evil." That's what it was.
When it first started?
Yeah.
Oh, weird.
And then it was removed from their code of conduct.
Because now you can be evil. Because what?
Because it's a lost cause.
What the heck?
Tiffany Perry wants to point out that 1 Corinthians 6:12, I think she's backing Pastor Monty here, says, "I have the right to do anything you say, but not everything is beneficial. I have the right to do anything, but I will not be mastered by anything." Hey, that's great if you have
Bless you, Tiffany.
Yes.
If you have a Christian worldview. Turn that off. Hurts my ears. Yeah.
Or how about this?
Okay.
Gretchen, stop trying to make fetch happen. It's not going to happen.
You better get used to him. He's going to direct the choir in heaven.
Okay. Anyway, yeah. So I think the larger issue, and I don't feel like it's really been addressed, if I'm being honest. I think the larger issue is this something that has to happen? Like, how do we feel about Like, are you okay with having truth, as we understand, like as Christians, we have a worldview that there's absolute truth, right? Are we okay with having truth sit next to, on equal footing in these platforms, with other things? With things that are not true, with things that are actually evil? That in my mind is the question, and that's what we're coming down to more and more, I think, where we're going to have to make we're going to have to push, like, this content that you're getting right now for free, and you're getting it, and because we have the license to do it, essentially, the company gives us the license to do it. You're getting it for free. You're getting it broadcast live as it's happening instead of put up, in post. I think that there's a real possibility that those days are numbered, whether on YouTube or Facebook. I mean, I guess Jordan Peterson has this thing, but that won't be free.
No, that I agree with. And for me personally, it comes down to an issue of sovereignty. I understand that God is in control. I understand the Scripture has clearly said that our Lord is returning, and I understand from a biblical standpoint that things are going to get worse before they get better.
Well, how do we ensure that? I think every person says that they want that freedom. So the difference is that some people want to ensure that freedom by essentially censoring, right? And then other people want to ensure that freedom by literally blowing the doors off of the gates.
Yeah, but as a believer,
so what is freedom? Here's a question: is freedom anarchy?
No. V for Vendetta.
Or exactly, is freedom anarchy? Do as thy will, or is freedom, which is by the way satanic? Is freedom anarchy, or is freedom order within a freedom to roam within a structure, trust of self? Which one is freedom? Because that's really what it comes down to. That's what's being fought for here. And I think it's really interesting in this case that it seems to be a bit flipped. I think like Maz's position, Vox's position, which seem to be synonymous with each other. Forgive me if they're not, but they seem to be synonymous with each other at this point, is that real freedom is the restriction. And that's kind of strange because they are liberal in nature. And Steven Crowder is saying that freedom is blow the gates off the door and let everybody's voice be heard equally, and then, and let them stand and fall on their merit. And he's conservative. I think it's just really interesting. And what position are we, like, what position do we take, like, as a church? Like, this is a real issue to me, because this is a real important ministry for our church, and this is a real important ministry for our church, and it's really important that what we're talking about have an open discussion. Like last week, I think Jesse was noting on the topic of abortion, that people aren't having these discussions with a 10-foot pole. The reality of it is, to put it in Pastor Monty speak, that we won't be able to have this conversation with a 10-foot pole live and in front of you and in perpetuity if we keep going down this direction.
Well, okay, so
And Tiffany Perry has something to say. She says, well, I wasn't really backing anyone. It took me a while to find where the verse was, but I was saying the standard for hate speech, but it isn't really exactly as easy as that.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And that's another question.
Still,
what is hate speech?
Bless you, Tiffany. First of all, I don't think is Crowder's not a believer.
Actually, I think he might be.
I think I've heard that somewhere too. Some sort of consensus.
But his religion doesn't play into. I've never heard him back his position from a theological standpoint ever.
Yeah. Well, that's fine, and that's not what he's called to do. So I get that. But here is the thing. He's somewhat older, if I remember correctly.
No, he's
low
like my
30s.
age.
Yeah, mid-30s.
In the old days, I'm just going to say, for foundational purposes, in the old days, the belief was that in order for democracy to exist, you needed to have open discussion between opposing points of view, and you needed to allow that voice to be heard from both opposition viewpoints, and then people could decide which way they wanted to go on how it is that they were going to deal with an issue. And increasingly, over the years, what has taken place, predominantly by those on the left, but what has taken place is that there has been a systematic design to oppress any opposition of viewpoint, and to only have so if you have somebody who is presenting an opposition viewpoint to where you're coming from, then you're going to personalize, you're going to make it an issue of morality.
Well, I think that's always been the case.
It has, but we see that more and more being reflected, and that's kind of a backdrop behind where Crowder is coming, I believe, versus where what we see it becoming a more dominant cultural struggle taking place.
Yeah, I think it's pretty much always been the case that people want to debate by logical fallacy. They want to debate by ad hominem, essentially, by attacking from a person, attacking the person rather than the idea, right? And so that's like how the Constitution, for instance, of the United States is set up specifically to like protect rights so that they can't be used that way, so that
right.
so a person's personhood can't be used against them.
So if you go back to the idea that we have, no, we're just talking about Western society or the United States in particular, because there are places around the world where people don't have a voice as believers, but they still are very much involved in the church and in the relationship to the church and how they can interact in their society, even in a limited basis. So we're talking predominantly about a phenomenon which is Western society, where we are spoiled and have this idea that we have the right to say whatever we want to.
Yeah.
Sure.
That foundation being laid, then I believe the real issue is part of your conviction that you believe if everybody has the right to say what they want to without restraint, then does that mean that that you throw away, as it were, your ideas about what are productive to the overall relationship, and in honoring the fact that you're in a relationship with others and you would like to still, you can agree to disagree. My wife and I, we've been married for 40 plus years. We don't personalize.
So what position?
Because we value the relationship.
So what position are you taking here in terms of that question that I posed earlier? Like,
should
would
we
you
be standing in the
right?
same
Should
shoulder
truth,
to shoulder?
Yeah. Should truth be shoulder to shoulder with lies and letting people figure that out?
Oh no, I don't
Okay.
think.
So you're confusing me because I don't know which position you're taking. Are you taking the position that's the position that Crowder would take? That's the position that I keep wanting to say church fathers, but they're not. The forefathers of America took, as you just pointed out earlier, that these things should be able to stand next to each other and then allow the merit of them to disqualify them.
Well, I am conflicted. I am conflicted to the standpoint that as a believer, which so truth should govern everything that I do. So as much as possible, I'm always going to stand on the point of truth. With that being said, when it comes to this issue of free speech, I believe that you do need to allow even those who present false narratives to be exposed to the light and deal with those narratives as they're presented. So I wouldn't stop a lie from being told. I would simply examine it as to its truthfulness or not.
Okay, so that's the side you're coming down. What do you think, Adam?
I think I agree. like we have some sort of responsibility in combating that, and so I think that we should be offering truth for those that would hear it and want it.
Yeah, so I think, like, when we go back to United States, I think the responsibility in combating it lies on the people, right? That's the responsibility of the press. That's why the press was given carte blanche in order to report on the veracity of statements that are made. And
which
so
is obviously
which
gone awry.
yes, they're failing miserably.
Because it's been bought out, essentially.
Yeah.
So, but the question is, do we think that over time, well, the question I'm going to ask right now is, do we think that over time, the power of the people will outweigh the propaganda of the machine?
Do we think that in time, the power of the people outweigh?
Yeah. So let me give you an example. So last week we're talking about abortion, right? Last show we're talking about abortion, and the power of the machine has essentially created a narrative for society that abortion is 100% wanted. And yet, what is happening is that there's been this mass pushback and mass exodus across states, even like with Netflix and within like hours, like Netflix had lost, over 100,000 subscribers because they said they were going to boycott Georgia. So clearly there's more than just that narrative that is true. That's the one narrative that's being presented by the media, the same media that owns the news stations and so on and so forth. And then you have, over time, these other voices have risen to the surface. And I think that that's what we're seeing now, is pushback on a whole bunch of things that the media for a long time has been saying, whether through their storytelling or through their news outlets. They've been saying that this is what the truth is. So the question is, in my mind, over time, will the voice of the people as sort of a new form of press in the internet age, everybody's a blogger, will that outweigh?
I don't know. Like, I see it, like, obviously, like, we're talking, like, we brought up the Miley Cyrus thing and the pushback. Miley Cyrus.
Right, it's a great example.
Baked cake and, abortion is all right, but then she had all the backlash about people baking their own cakes and flipping her original post, which was funny. But I don't know. I worry, to your question, I worry that there aren't enough people in positions of influence giving the opposing view. Like, the influential hubs are all... Yeah.
So if there's not enough people in influence giving the opposing view, then that seems like you lean more toward putting a moratorium on what can be said.
Can you say that in a different way?
Yeah. Like, essentially, if we're worried that the truth isn't being given, then we should censor what is being said.
No, I said that's not what I was saying. I was saying that to your question, do we think that you were saying, do we think that the people will outweigh the propaganda of the machine? So my concern is that there aren't enough people in those spheres of influence that can offer that opposing viewpoint. Not that we should censor the other, but there aren't enough good guys in those, on those platforms.
So to what end are you worried about then?
I'm worried that the people will not
rise up.
Will not outweigh
and that society will eventually... See, my thing is, in that case, then let disaster fall. That's how I feel. Like, societies are supposed to be... Societies are built around the fact that people are valuable, which is based upon their knowledge of the image of God. That's the Christian worldview. That's the Christian perspective. And a society rises and falls based upon its understanding of that perspective. If we love God wholeheartedly and we love man tenderheartedly, and we retain that information and we build our laws and structure around it, then we succeed. That's why America succeeded. And as America loses that mentality, for instance, it decides to devalue human beings and kill them when they're in the mother's womb, for instance.
Or when they've just gotten out of it.
Or just exited, which is really scary.
Yeah.
Then what you're having is a devaluing of that innate humanness, And that harkens back to an image of God issue, and that's when a society will fall. And so my question in that is, like, what is our entitlement to American society when that society needs to fall? The other thing that I would say about this is, in terms of a Christian perspective, Christianity has survived the gamut of societies, and it always thrives based upon its position being a biblical worldview, based upon its position being holy, or for those of you who maybe don't understand that, set apart. That's what it means. It's holy. It's set apart. So the Christian perspective is a set apart perspective that is always going to be different. It's always informed differently. It comes from revelation rather than man's understanding. It comes from what God has told us. And so because of that, it always thrives, whether it's in Roman persecution, whether it's in China right now being persecuted. It doesn't matter. It always thrives. You know where it stops thriving is when it comes into no persecution. When people stop persecuting the Christian faith and say that, we can hold a Christian consensus. And that's exactly what happened in America. We held a Christian consensus. It's okay to be Christians. And then that opened the doorway for people to stop thinking critically about their Christianity. And when that happened, we have what we have now.
Yeah, my take on this whole thing is comprehensive but sophisticated.
Okay.
Thanks for bringing us full circle there.
Yeah, there you go. The deal, the atomic clock?
Yes.
Okay, so the atomic clock,
like the doomsday clock?
Yeah. For those of you who aren't aware, the scientific community believes that society is on the brink of destruction. With nuclear
you are speaking
war.
about the doomsday clock. The atomic clock is a different thing.
Yeah, right. The atomic clock is okay. Yes, the doomsday clock.
Yes. Which is a really interesting comic book right now. Also.
Yeah, and you're also probably aware of the illusion of a frog cooking itself in water that's slowly boiling.
Yep.
See, here's the thing. I think that what's happened is, which agrees with what you're saying, Josh, is that as a society, now we're talking about Western society. So in America particularly, those who are on the right and those who are of faith, and particularly the church, has been negligent of being vigilant in presenting the truth and addressing these types of issues as a society. And we are now, I believe, in the last throes of waking up. But the real question then is, have we woken up too late?
Too late to save American society.
Yes, that's correct. And so
that's the really good question about it. And I think when you see what's going on with what's going on right now with the fight against abortion,
right?
I think that honestly, the quote unquote freedom to act without any respect for human life whatsoever in these late term abortions that got signed into bills, that is what got signed into law. That is what started to wake up the Christian consensus again.
Right. And so my position as a believer is that while I understand Scripture to say that it's inevitable that we will see society, all societies, but that we will see society be dominated by self and by sin and gravitate towards the ugliness of those more and more, and I have no control over that. What I do have control over is that as long as I'm alive, that I take the steps to, when I hear untruth or false narratives, that I engage those who are presenting them in a respectful manner, but nonetheless bring up truth and stand for it in whatever way that I can. So I think that it's good that we have networks, for example, news networks, so all the major networks present these false narratives that are out there clearly. But, for example, Fox News presents both sides of things and has frank discussions about what the liberals believe and what the conservatives believe.
Okay, but both sides claim that, right?
I know that. I'm just saying that
I know you're a Fox fanboy.
There are few current networks that make an effort to be unbiased. Fox is one of those. There's
by your estimation.
By my estimation, which being comprehensive and sophisticated.
I mean, you do have your own show.
Yes, that is correct. So there is a response, and the other. So what that necessitates then, as myself, as a believer, I cannot sit back idly and take everything in and not be critical about what I take in. I have to educate myself. I have to critically understand the issues, and I have to be willing to articulate those in a respectful manner. And I think that there are many people, quite frankly, I would just say, in Christendom and then further out from Christendom in America that are simply intellectually lazy.
Intellectually lazy.
Intellectually lazy.
Into lazy. Yeah.
Into lazy.
Yeah, into lazy.
Oh, man.
Well, I think that's what makes a show like this really important.
Yeah.
And for me, I mean, I'll give my personal opinion. Sorry, I was watching a news feed just pop up. I'll give my personal opinion on it. I think that things should be allowed to sit together on the shelf in the non-Christian world. In the Christian world, anybody who's not a part of my church, I'm not going to say that you have to hold the Bible on.
Sure.
I'm going to fight for that. I'm going to let you know that I do that. But in the non-Christian world, I think everything should go on the same shelf, and let its usefulness stand as a testament on its own merit. The other thing, if you don't do that, then at the risk of being a savior, you become a tyrant, and that's the thing. I like, spoiler alert, but when we talk about Daenerys, in like Game of Thrones, that's like basically what you have is you have somebody who is trying to free things and so on and so forth, and eventually becomes a tyrant because you have to continue to maintain that freedom and continue to maintain that freedom based upon the order that you put down. That's a scary thing. And so for me, I think that Crowder and Mazza should have a voice next to each other. We haven't talked about hate speech, but maybe that's another one we can talk about a different time.
I was just thinking, but even on that same shelf, like what you're saying, like that's not sustainable, right? Like, because what's useful for someone today is not useful for someone tomorrow, is not useful for this person, is not useful
which is why I would advocate for the biblical position.
Right, so ultimately that doesn't even hold. Like,
but
though it makes sense, it doesn't.
Well, that's the thing, is that the natural order will weed out the things that aren't useful over time. Does that make sense? So, and then and have a critical mind about it. If you've got this one thing that's useful for all societies over all of time, and then you have all these other things that aren't, well, then maybe you should start to perhaps own that.
Well, except that in the way it works itself out, I agree that it will eventually weed, but the weeding process can be very painful and deadly.
Which is what's happening right now.
Yes.
And that's, going back to the hate speech issue. And like I said, maybe that's a concept that we can talk about to extend this. But I know we got to wrap up the show. We're at about an hour and 10 minutes here. But Joseph Jesse posted this quote from the HBO show Chernobyl.
I've been meaning to watch that show, man.
Yeah, I know. He posted this. Maybe we can finally do a live viewing of it. We were talking about doing for Culture Insanity. We were talking about doing a reaction.
But I don't know if that's a good one to start with.
Because
I do want to watch
it. It is
that
HBO.
Show.
Anyway, we were talking about doing a reaction video. Anyway, the quote that he posted was this from the HBO show Chernobyl. Every lie that we tell incurs a debt to the truth. Sooner or later, that debt is paid.
Yeah.
It's a good line.
It is. The Bible has a similar line. It says, even the deepest seeds find the light of day.
Yes. Also a good line. All right, let's wrap it up. So, Josh, I don't know if you posted. I kind of was trying to look if any of the links for this conversation.
Some of them.
They're all obviously on our thread. If you want to post them, so that people can go back and look at how this sort of resurfaced and reared its ugly head. But so if you're interested in that, be looking for that on the comments section maybe. And then again, we have rebranded our things that we do here at ABF. With the number of shows we do, we've gone down to one Facebook page, so you can look for all of these things and all of our content that we produce here at Aletheia on the Vigilance Radio Network Facebook group page. So make sure you're liking and following and subscribing to that. And if you have something you're personally interested in, Jacob Browning, post it on our Facebook page so that we can tackle it. I think, Jacob Browning reached out to us about tackling an episode of Black Mirror. So put that through the proper channels so that people can follow along, so that maybe they can watch it, so that they come to the episode with the same, what would you call that? Consuming the same thing that we did, so that they would understand where we're coming from.
Same narrative.
Yeah, same narrative. And then if you're interested in exploring your faith, as always, or are completely new to Christ or the Bible, you can check out the help tab on our website, abfpdx.org. With that said, a couple plugs. Next Sunday, so not tomorrow. Tomorrow's Father's Day. We like to honor our fathers on Father's Day. But next Sunday, on June 23rd at 7 p.m., will be the latest episode of our Tiles ministry, which stands for the Young Lectern Series, which is just an opportunity we give to young Christian people speaking on things that they think are really interesting happening or not happening within the church. So here at Aletheia at 7 p.m. next Sunday, Jasmine Pierzina is going to be talking about church synergy or collaboration, so look forward to that. That will again be posted on our Vigilance Radio Network page if you can't make it to the church, so look forward to that. And then the following week on June 30th, again at 7, we like our time slot of 7 p.m., we'll have the Abandoned Initiative's latest Upper Story podcast. Again, it's a yellow couch talk with just different youths within the church, not just ours, but other churches as well, talking about things that aren't talked about. So within the church and within the youth of the church. So that will be on prayer. Again, that's at 7 p.m. Again, that's streamed live on the Vigilance Radio Network page. And then, as always, we have our podcast. We are every other Saturday, or no, that's not true. We're the first and third Saturday for Culture and Sanity at 9 a.m. And then Pastor Monty has his show, Truth Time, at Tuesdays at 11. So yeah, lots that we're doing always. And again, if you like what we're doing and appreciate what we're doing and feel convicted to give, please do that. Like, share, donate, whatever you can and whatever you would like. What's up, Josh?
Yeah, I just wanted to do a follow-up. So we had some feedback on our abortion special.
Special. Jeez, we'll call it that.
We had some feedback on our abortion spectacular last week. And there were some people who said, hey, why is it just a bunch of men talking about it? And I'd thrown out there to at least our congregation, hey, if you want to come on, if you're a woman, because apparently gender identity matters when we want it to. It's a whole nother dig. If you're a woman and you want to talk about abortion, feel free to come on the show and talk about it. So I want to extend that invitation to you. Look, we're talking about it because it's part of culture. We believe that we are image bearers of God, and that's the reason why we talk about things, not because we have penises or vaginas. So, that being said, if you're a woman and you want to come on the show and talk about abortion with us, we want to continue to have that conversation. And you can talk to us, you can inform us, you can respectfully dissent. And
right.
and Right? Yeah, and we'll go from there. So reach out to the show.
Yeah.
Reach out to the show
we'll
and
get something scheduled.
Let's have that conversation and we'll get it scheduled. Back to you, Adam.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's it. So thanks, guys. We look forward to this ongoing discussion. And thanks for tuning in, those that did and will in the future. And we'll catch you next time. See ya.
The views presented in this program are not meant to express the specific views of the Lafayette Bible Fellowship. You are listening to the Vigilance Radio Network.